a quick question on Vance, who Trump picked as his running mate yesterday. He's been a vocal critic of U.S. aid for Ukraine and has said that Britain was an Islamist nuclear-armed country. What's the administration's view of this, and do you have any concerns that this could endanger the relationship?
So I'm going to probably have a tough time over the next few months when there are going to be a lot of claims made on the campaign trail that I want to respond to and probably shouldn't respond to. So I will instead just speak about our record and our record of support for Ukraine. And ultimately, I think the question really comes down to not just what we support and what anyone else in public life supports, but what the American people support. And what we have seen is when it comes to Ukraine, the American people strongly support continued assistance to Ukraine. They strongly support allowing Ukraine and helping Ukraine to defend itself against Russia's aggression. And it's not just the American public, but it's bipartisan majorities in both houses of Congress. And when you saw the supplemental appropriations bill finally get a vote after obstruction on one side of the aisle, we saw an overwhelming vote in support of military assistance. So I think that's probably where I should leave it with that. And with respect to the United Kingdom, look, we have a long-standing, close relationship, a special relationship with the United Kingdom. And despite any kind of, I won't comment at all. I think the American people understand the importance of that relationship and would reject any attempts to mischaracterize it. Yeah.
The U.S. and Saudi Arabia or yesterday signed an agreement on space. What's the importance of this agreement, and is it part of the larger package that the U.S. is working with Saudi Arabia on?
So that is a separate agreement from the ongoing discussions we have had with Saudi Arabia about what further regional integration would look like and what improved bilateral relationships and expanded bilateral agreements between the United States and Saudi Arabia would look like in the context of regional integration. So it is a separate agreement. That said, the specifics to it, I'll have to take the question and get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question is regarding the President Biden recent interview to 360 with Speedy, in which he said that he got call from Saudis and they want to fully recognize Israel with the security conditions. The question is, we have seen a brief security brief by the National Security Team to the Congress about the nuclear cooperation, that is civilian nuclear program with the Saudi Arabia. And we got mixed reactions from the Congress, from the Republicans and Democrats. Some wrote a letter to President Biden to condition it with the non-proliferation, and some said like you have to look twice on this. So it seemed like there is some prioritizing by the US, and in this interview President Biden didn't mention anything that Saudis are mentioning two-state solution for the Palestine. So is there anything under consideration regarding just with the security guarantees for the normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel?
So do you mean, I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Do you mean that we would just do an agreement with Saudi Arabia absent?
With the security deal context.
Oh, yeah. No, look, you've heard me speak to this before, and you've heard other leaders of our government, that no, this is a package deal, that it all works together, or it doesn't really work at all. And we've heard the government of Saudi Arabia say that something that's important for them for normalization is to get a legitimate path to two states. And so we continue to look at this as something that we believe is very important, something that we believe is hopefully achievable, but no, we're not pursuing as separate agreements.
One on Pakistan, two more security personnel got killed in a hours-long exchange of fire with the terrorists. And again, these are terrorists coming from the safe haven in Afghanistan. So you've spoken many times from this podium, and the question is, do United States have some concerns with the persons who took responsibility or who took guarantees in Doha agreement that they will not let them use this soil against the neighboring Pakistan, who've been a U.S. ally? So you have any concerns? You have anything on this? You have anything on this?
Sure. So I'll first say that of course the Pakistani people have suffered greatly at the hands of violent extremists and terrorists. We have a shared interest with the Pakistani people and the government of Pakistan in combating threats to regional security. And yes, we do continue to urge the Taliban to ensure that terrorist attacks are not launched from Afghan soil. That has been a priority for us in engagements with them, and it continues to be. Yeah, Michelle.
On the diplomatic solution between Israel and Hezbollah, is there an agreement already ready to be signed in case there is a ceasefire in Gaza?
So I'm not going to speak in detail to the diplomacy that we have been pursuing to resolve the conflict across the blue line, other than to say that it continues to be our assessment that it's important to get a ceasefire in Gaza to unlock the possibility of an agreement to that conflict. So it's something that we're pursuing, but you've heard Hezbollah say publicly that if there is a ceasefire in Gaza, they will stop their attacks on Israel. We don't think they need to wait for that, but certainly that's what they've said. So we'll continue to pursue diplomacy to resolve that conflict, but we really do think a ceasefire in Gaza is important to unlocking a further possibility of achieving it.
Thank you.
Who's that? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Joel, I'll come to you next. Yeah.
Thank you very
I
much.
knew there was somebody over there. There was somebody over here that had their hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Matt. As you mentioned earlier, that elections are getting close, so you are going to be asked questions about campaigns. So Sarah Sanders, when she was the spokesperson at the White House, her child and my child were in class, but for 4 years, I did not go to the White House press briefings. But when this administration came and I did go, I was not treated anything much nicer either.
Is this about the stool again at the White House? You raised this in a
It was
previous
not the
briefing,
stool,
and I
it's
didn't. And I
the
wasn't.
handicap
No.
seat. It's the handicap seat, and I don't think it's
Got
funny
it.
at all.
No, I didn't.
You know what
I
mean?
didn't understand. I didn't
No,
know.
no,
I
but I'm
didn't.
just-
I didn't know that's what it
I'm just
was.
waiting-
I remember you
I'm just
raising it
saying
previously.
the
and I didn't know
elections
the
are coming,
context.
so I had much better. I had very good hopes on President Biden administration regarding the media treatment. What I'm saying is that during their time, I did not even go once for the press briefing because their
Right.
attitude.
Let me just interrupt you quickly to ask that you get to the question. Sorry. As much as I enjoy the extended
Okay.
wind-ups.
So Voice of America had asked you a question that Taliban are asking about the helicopters from Uzbekistan, and you had said that you would reply them back. Is there any update about those helicopters or no?
We did get back to Voice of America. If you're interested in the answer, I'll take it back and get the same answer back to you.
Just one last question. Last week, a couple of weeks ago, I had a chance to listen to one of the three amazing diplomats, Ambassador Munter, Ambassador Hale, and Ambassador Peterson. And Peterson, they all served in Pakistan as ambassadors. One of them said that it's great that Pakistan is off the back, so we don't have to pay billions of dollars every year. Ambassador Ann Peterson said that the fifth largest country in the world should not be let down and should not be the way it is basically right now. Just give me a little bit of the Indo-Pacific strategy. Where is Pakistan fitting in this whole situation right now? Because from what I see, Pakistan seems to be going down in almost every aspect that I can think of.
So Pakistan continues to be a close partner that we work with on a number of important matters, including improving the Pakistan economy. You've heard me speak a number of times to the importance of securing an IMF facility and Pakistan making reforms in that regard, and we'll continue to do so. All right,
Thank
Joel.
you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Just want to, I guess, follow up really briefly on the Saudi Arabia question.
Yeah.
Just be clear that the president's characterization of it was broadly correct. And then, do you think that you have time to, in this administration, to work out that kind of deal if events unfold in Israel the way you want, or has that window closed?
So I don't want to put a timeline on it, partly because, look, you've heard the secretary say that in his conversations with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, there are two things that he needs to be able to reach a deal. One is calm in Gaza. Two is a path to an independent Palestinian state. We don't yet have a calm in Gaza, so it's a little hard to speculate about the timeline of a normalization deal when we haven't reached the first milestone. So we're going to continue to push to get calm in Gaza, to get a ceasefire. We have plans we are working with our partners in the region on security and governance and ultimately reconstruction for Gaza in the period after a conflict. And as part of that, we are discussing with Saudi Arabia what a broad normalization integration deal would look like. But there is a lot of work that remains to be done to get there, including, of course, the question about a ceasefire in Gaza.
Okay, and then if I could just follow up also on the Russia question. Sergei Lavrov's in New York today, and he mentioned, obviously there's been talk about possible more, peace talks with Ukraine and Russia at some point. He mentioned that a political diplomatic solution must be accompanied by concrete steps to eliminate threats to the Russian Federation from the Western Euro-Atlantic direction. It seems to be a reference to that draft treaty they put out in 2021. I know you're very deferential to the Ukrainians in terms of talking about the Ukrainian position there. Are you guys willing at all to have some kind of larger conversation connected to that process? And what do you make also? He mentioned that it would have to be, take into account geostrategic realities on the Eurasian continent. There's been a lot of talk in this room and elsewhere about China enabling Russia's defense industry for the war in Ukraine. Is it your understanding that China is also backing Russia in terms of its negotiating position or desired negotiating position vis-a-vis NATO in that larger project?
So when it comes to the this wasn't part of the question, but maybe the premise of the question. You're right that we do think that Ukraine needs to be at the forefront of any diplomacy to end the war because they are the victim of this aggression. It is their territory that's being occupied. It's their people that have been killed, that continue to suffer as a result of a war that they did not start, that they've suffered from, and in fact they've been suffering from for 10 years now. Of course, it's not just a war that started in February of 2022. So it is important that Ukraine be in the driver's seat for what is ultimately their future, and we will support them in whatever way possible. To the larger question you asked about it, though, the problem with that formulation, not the formulation of your question, but the problem with the formulation from the foreign minister is there's no one in Europe that is threatening Russia. There's no one in Europe that was threatening Russia before the invasion of Ukraine, either the invasion of Ukraine in 2014 or the full-scale invasion in 2022. What Russia seems to see as a threat is a democracy functioning on its borders. And that's just not a legitimate view. There's not been a military threat. No one has threatened to take Russian territory, to take Russian land. So we reject that view, and so we'll continue to work with our Ukrainian partners on where diplomacy can take ultimately ending this conflict with a just peace, not just a peace, but a just and a lasting peace. With respect to China, look, we have seen, as you said, further relationship between China and Russia, and it's not just with respect to revitalizing the defense industrial base. It is also with respect to being a major strategic partner of Russia. You've seen close ties between President Putin and President Xi, with visits between the two. And so I can't ultimately predict where it will go. What I can tell you is that when we have talked directly to the Chinese government, we have said that ultimately we would hope that they could play a productive role in ending the conflict, but it needed to be a role that recognized who was the aggressor and who was the victim. And it was not just getting peace for peace sake, but also getting peace that was a just peace and a lasting peace for the state of Ukraine. But ultimately, I can't tell you what they're going to do. Sure.
Saudi Arabia.
Sure.
Yesterday, the president in an interview said that the Saudi conditions for normalization with Israel would be, a guaranteed protection by the United States and the provision of arms and a security agreement, and also the ability to have a peaceful nuclear program and so on. He did not mention a Saudi condition that has always been, laid in the back about a Palestinian state and all these things.
That answer is just with respect to the bilateral agreements between the United States. I know it does get some confusing sometimes because in these discussions, there are bilateral agreements that would take place between the United States and Saudi Arabia as part of an integration deal, a normalization deal, and then there are other things that have to happen between Saudi Arabia and, of course, of Israel, the two countries that would be normalizing relationship with each other. But Saudi Arabia has always made clear that for that to move forward, it still does, has always made clear and still makes clear that they need to see calm in Gaza and they need to see a path to two states. That has not changed. Alex, go ahead, and then we'll wrap for today.
Last week's Washington communique was completely silent about Georgia, like zero mentioning of Georgia in comparison with previous years. In Vilnius, they had an entire chapter on its membership bid, your Atlantic aspirations. Can you please help us put that in the context? I know that you guys hosted the foreign minister in this building. What is your view of Georgia, lacking, in this bid?
So we continue to support the Georgian people's Euro-Atlantic aspirations, but we have seen the government of Georgia take a different turn and take a different path. We've seen the government of Georgia pass laws that move Georgia away from its democratic trajectory. As you know, you've spoken about the law that they passed and how the effect that it could have on civil society and the way it could enable government crackdowns on legitimate democratic rights. And so it is the Georgian government's actions that have fundamentally altered its relationship with the United States, but not just with the United States, with countries in Europe.
And on that point, any update for us regarding the second tranche
No.
of visa sanctions?
No updates from here. All right, thanks everyone.